property and build 650 apartments for a total of 650,000 square feet. Some opposed having any residential uses on this site, while others simply wanted less of everything, less density overall. Others expressed a strong preference for office space instead of housing. In response to these concerns, the developers made some changes that at the time seemed promising. They cut the number of apartments from 650 down to 300 for a savings of 350,000 square feet, and added 50,000, I now understand it's up to 50,000 square feet of office space. The final EIR claims that this office space replaced a comparable amount of retail space originally planned for that same location. However, that's not the end of this story. With that reduction in the number of apartments, 350 fewer units totaling 350,000 square feet of freed up space, the developers could have made this reconfigured South Bay Galleria the kind of inviting community gathering spot people would enjoy visiting. Instead of doing that, they crammed the extra space with even more stores and restaurants. This made the entire EIR process feel like one big shell game. In a world where people are increasingly buying online and malls all over the country are failing, the brick-and-mortar retail world needs to offer something different than the standard issue jam-packed mall. To not only survive but thrive, the new Galleria will need to be an inviting place to shop, enjoy good food at a range of prices, and socialize with friends and family in a pleasant outdoor environment. Looking at the schematic for this project, it reminds me more of a hike through retail canyon country than a place I would care to visit. While the developers' renderings of grassy, sun-drenched community park and neighborhood park look as though something new and exciting will be happening on this mall property, in comparison with the size and close arrangement of the buildings, these green spaces look more like grassy thoroughfares, actually fake grassy thoroughfares, for moving people from one store, restaurant, or parking structure to another. Despite the input of city residents who made it clear this wasn't what they wanted to see at this reinvigorated South Bay Galleria, the developer has basically created an open-air version of the densely built and failed West Side Pavilion, rather than a place with the welcoming look and feel of the Point in El Segundo. QIC is banking on the assumption. Done?
Yes,
okay.
Thank you. And after Lana is Sean Moore, City of Lawndale.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lana Lehman, City of Lawndale, with the Lawndale City Attorney's Office. We have submitted 2 written letters of comment to the Commission and also to the Council, and we will incorporate into any verbal comments we make tonight those written comments. There are a few points that I would like to highlight if I have time to. First of all, with respect to the variance that is presented before you this evening, we believe that there are still general plan inconsistency problems with the entitlements that are presented to you and with the final EIR. And you cannot use a variance to resolve a general plan inconsistency. In fact, your variance ordinance requires general plan consistency. And I would also note that I find it hard to believe that in earnest that you can meet the findings for your variance regarding the unique topography, location, and surroundings, shape and size of this property as it would relate to granting a variance. A variance is, and these are not my words, these are court words, a variance is an extraordinary entitlement. It is reserved for those situations where you have a site that is so physically constrained by its topography, its geography, its surroundings. It has a canyon running down the middle. It is so physically constrained that it has an inability without the variance to have the same type of uses that its surrounding properties do. This is not that unique topographical property. This is a square, flat, downtown mall type of property. It's pretty typical in terms of that, and in terms of being able to be developed compatible with the surrounding land uses. I will note, because I know probably short on time, I will also note, Lawndale is your neighbor. We really want to work with the city. Unfortunately, we have never been able to really have an outreach meeting with staff with regard to this matter until 2 days ago. We would hope that outreach would be expected, at a level of best practices or better. And I think that here, best practices would really demand recirculation of this EIR. I understand this has been continued twice. This is less than 10% of the document. Just 30 days of continuance. This is less than 10% of the document. That's a lot of document, and this is double-paged. But more than that, there are important changes in here. And the CEQA guidelines require that the public have meaningful comment and a meaningful opportunity to comment, and it should be recirculated if the public doesn't get meaningful comment on the changes that are made between the draft EIR and the final EIR. I'll just give you one example. It wasn't until the final EIR that we learned that this is an apartment complex as opposed to owner-operated. I believe that's a meaningful difference.
After Sean Moore will be Marna Smith.
Smeltzer. Marna Smeltzer.
Oh,
Good evening.
Smeltzer, sorry, Marna.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, of the audience, Sean Moore, City of Lawndale Community Development Director. It's not often that, I come down to Redondo Beach or our adjacent cities, but because of this project, it's mandated that I be here tonight to bring to your attention the deficiency, the defectiveness, and the inadequacy of this final EIR as well as the draft EIR. We've contacted staff for many months. Not once has staff come to Lawndale, contacted me, or sat down even months. Either the applicant or the project proponents have contacted Lawndale, yet Lawndale will receive the mass majority of the traffic impacts from this project that are generated. Irreversible impacts. I want to point something out to you that maybe staff forgot to point out to you. The ultimate document in this city is the general plan. I have your general plan down. I've downloaded your general plan right here, your sections, and it's the Galleria Mall general plan section, pages 2-77, 2-78, as Lana had pointed out about making the variance findings for the height of the buildings, the hotel, as well as the residential buildings. Those are both brand new buildings. You cannot exceed the general plan heights with the variance. Let me point something out. You can exceed it with the zoning and apply for a variance, but you can never exceed your requirements under your general plan. It's a good general plan. It has maximum heights outlined in the general plan that says 60 feet for new buildings. For existing structures, you can add on. You have a deficiency in your document. If Planning Commission makes findings to move forward with this, you have a fatally flawed action, and you cannot make the findings legally to adopt this, certify the EIR, or adopt moving forward with this project. It's in defiance of your general plan. I have the sections here, and it clearly states that under section 2.78, that no building shall be higher than 60 feet unless approved by the Planning Commission on existing structures on the property. You cannot use a variance to exceed the heights for that area under your zoning code, especially your general plan. That's your ultimate document, and any attorney here that has any basic planning background knows that. I want to also add to the commission, let you know that this project is deficient in aesthetics, air quality, biology, greenhouse gases, land use, noise, population, housing, traffic, parking, water supply assessment. I've worked on many, many projects. That document that sits in front of you, if anyone in this room, including this applicant that hired ESA and I've worked with ESA, you think that document is bulletproof? It's not. That document will not hold water. It's deficient. It's not adequately reviewed. And it does not meet CEQA guidelines. I mentioned that to Mr. Jones, and we were ignored. We sent many emails. We've talked to you guys. We tried to reach out, but Lawndale's concerns have been ignored. No one has reached out. No one has made any effort to talk to the city of Lawndale or even contacted me directly.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go through the public testimony. At the end, staff will have the opportunity to address any of the questions that might have come up. Marna, followed by Don Zerlip.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Marna Smeltzer. I am representing the Redondo Beach Chamber of Commerce tonight, and I'm also an over 50-year resident of Redondo Beach. The Chamber of Commerce, one of our core values is creating a strong local economy. And we recognize how important the Galleria is to, and always has been, to the local economy and local vitality here in Redondo Beach. So I was asked to share some of the reasons why the Chamber supports this project. The project is critical because the Galleria was generating 35% of all sales tax prior to the loss of Nordstrom. The success of the Redondo Beach economy is tied to the success of the Galleria. Both QIC and Forest City has gone out of their way to incorporate a number of project revisions based on community feedback to the plan throughout the EIR process. The proposal of housing of 300 units is minimal compared to the 650 that is allowed under the code. Redondo Beach needs these types of attainable units to house our teachers, firefighters, and young professionals. And you heard tonight that there is an MOU on the table with the LA Air Force Base to provide housing for them. I know a little bit about that, so I won't go into a lot of the detail there, but I know that because of the teachers that were being turned away, that Redondo Unified became involved in this too, and I think that was really to the QIC and Forest Cities. I want to commend them for that because it's really important that we be able to house these employees. The center will become a hub in North Redondo Beach, incorporating entertainment, office, hotel, restaurant, residential uses, and highly programmable open spaces, which I believe is also needed up there. Approving an alternative 401 is the first step to revitalizing the Artesia Boulevard. With renovated Galleria underway, other property owners will have the incentive to reinvest in their properties, generating new jobs, sales tax revenues, and rebirth of the Artesia corridor. For these reasons, the Redondo Beach is supporting the project, and we ask for your consideration tonight and that you approve the project and move forward. And thank you all for what you do. I really appreciated all your comments tonight. They were very thoughtful.
Don Zerlip, followed by William Winder.
Good evening, Commissioners. Don Zerlip, City of Redondo Beach. Just about the first word that was uttered by Aaron Jones was that this project was transformative. We've heard that a number of times. In fact, this project was highlighted recently at the South Bay COGS General Assembly, where they were talking about the future of retail. And this was used as an example of how these types of land uses and these types of spaces can be transformed into something that will answer the needs of those in our future. It's doubtful that I will ever live at the Galleria, but I shop there. In fact, I work there. I go to Macy's. What I see is a huge amount of people that are drawn to the Galleria as opposed to Del Amo because of its freeway access. And in the future, regardless of whether it's on Hawthorne Boulevard or it's on the existing right-of-way, rail will come here. It is scheduled, it is programmed, it is moving forward. This will be the hub where one can build true transit-oriented development. And this project, to me, transforms beyond that into something where either you can live and be without your car all weekend long, or you can commute to here because it becomes a business center. As far as how many square feet are being used for one application or the other, I'm less concerned about that and more concerned about the whole idea of the mix. The idea that we will have $7.5 million in Quimby fees, the largest fee paid to this city ever under the Quimby ordinance. It's actual real money where you can actually acquire land and use it for the public benefit, not just at this site, but throughout our city. So I hope that you will find a way, with what modifications are reasonable, to approve this project and help us plan for the future of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. William Winder, followed by George Kiner.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is William Winder. I'm with the law firm of Aylshire and Winder. We are here along with our colleagues representing a community that has been ignored in this process, the City of Lawndale. We've already advised you that we incorporate into our client's position the statements articulated in our letter delivered to you today and in previous comments. You have heard tonight a completely scripted, thoroughly rehearsed, and carefully choreographed presentation by the applicant, which is to be expected and to be understood. Fortunately, the California Environmental Quality Act requires you to step back away from carefully scripted, thoroughly rehearsed, and carefully choreographed presentations and undertake an honest evaluation of the impacts of a project, not only on the community of Redondo Beach, but on the broader regional community in which we all live. And your nearest neighbor, Lawndale, is going to be directly and adversely impacted. We all know that there exists today unbelievable traffic impacts on Hawthorne Boulevard, even in the failing project that you're trying to revitalize. The impacts from that project on your neighbors who will not benefit from that project financially or in any material effect, but will absorb the traffic impacts, have not been adequately analyzed in this environmental impact report. The 4.1 alternative, which is being touted today as the recommended course of action, is new to the process. And under CEQA guidelines, those new elements have to be independently studied, reviewed, circulated for comment, and then acted on appropriately. We believe that that new element requires, at a minimum, additional study and additional analysis, objective study, objective analysis, not carefully choreographed presentations, and then an honest evaluation on its impact not only on your community, but on your neighbors. And it is your neighbor that I am here to represent today. And on the basis of that neighbor, we respectfully submit to you that the environmental documents before you are insufficient as a matter of law, vulnerable to legal challenge, and moving this process forward tonight without recirculation and without further study is not warranted and is not going to advance the process in any material respects. Whatever decision is made tonight is certainly going to be appealed. Whatever final decision is ultimately made, unless adequate environmental impacts are addressed, will result in litigation. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. After George will be Dion Chow.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is George Reiner. I'm a senior transportation engineer with Crane & Associates, and we were asked by the City of Lawndale to review the transportation analysis. Let me start by saying that the South Bay Galleria Improvement Project could be a great project. However, as it's designed, it is not transit-oriented. Transit-oriented is more than having a nearby bus stop. If you take a look at the letter put in by the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Agency, they took and they had a section labeled transit-oriented. Then look at the final responses, which basically were ignore everything Metro said. Take a look at the site plan. On the site plan, you'll see a lot of parking spaces, all sorts of automobile access, but you won't find a bus stop. They don't say anything about pedestrians. They talk nice about bicycles, but look at the site plan. So, okay, next let's go to mixed use. And they talk about this great mixed use project. You go to the South Bay Galleria, try and find a grocery store for your day-to-day needs. take a look at what they do. They reduced the theater, which actually interacts. They took, and there is no pharmacy in the South Bay Galleria. They haven't talked about adding anything. They're taking housing, which is pointed out, the state has identified is horribly needed. So what did they do? They chop it in half. They're taking, and it's not a mixed use development as they're saying it is when you actually look at it from a transportation point of view. They're taking a lot of credit. If you look in the EIR, however, they don't have any worksheets. They don't tell you what the assumptions are. They have a real nice sales brochure about their great program, but no worksheets. Then, so let's take a look at it just from a simple traffic engineering point of view. And right now, the city of Redondo Beach has this normal procedures of LOS, and you look at what the impacts are. Then you take a look at what they assumed on the trip generation. They called it typical retail. Would you actually consider the South Bay Galleria just as typical retail? When you run out for a quart of milk versus the people going into the South Bay Galleria, who's doing longer trips? Who's going to be more likely for the freeway? So that, well, we submitted the letter, but the bottom line is, no, it wasn't a professional standard.
Okay, thank you. Dion Chow, followed by Cindy Hazard.
Good evening. Dion Chow, General Manager of the AMC Theaters at the South Bay Galleria. As you probably know, a couple of years ago, AMC and the landowners invested over $8 million in a major remodel and overhaul of the facilities there. And I think that we have now, one of the best examples of a movie theater in the entire Los Angeles area, right here in the city of Redondo Beach. We did that because we were excited about the potential and the future of the South Bay Galleria. I'm excited about the idea of having people, friends, family, coming, living, working, shopping, dining, hopefully watching a movie every once in a while. That excites me, and I encourage you to support this proposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Hazard, followed by Jason Gately.
Hi there. In an effort not to be redundant, we would like to say, as Redondo Beach residents and parents of 3 kids, each elementary, middle, and high school, and my spouse is a teacher, and we've been here a long, long time. We love the idea of Redondo Beach being a place where you can drop off your kid and a friend, and it's a safe place to go. And currently, they're having us do that at Del Amo Mall, or The Point, or if we have family coming in from out of town, whether it be New York City or Big Bear, where my family would be coming from. We don't really hang out in Redondo when you're going to go out to dinner. You tend to go somewhere else. And there's so many people here and so many opportunities to enjoy what we have, and to have outdoor spaces and these nice restaurants and a whole different feel simply makes sense to us. So I don't want to go over everything everyone said before, but I think they did a beautiful job of really responding to all of the feedback that they got from the community and all of the outreach. I know Jeff's done, and you've been part of that as well. And so we just want to say that we are both Redondo Beach residents and in support of it for quality of life. Thanks.
Thank you. Jason Gately, followed by Josh Bourgeois. Excuse me if I butcher your name.
My name is Jason Gately. I'm a representative with the Teamsters Union. And one of the things that we looked at is we represent workers on both the construction side and the service side once it opens. And I appreciate the dialogue that took place about the building and that it will be skilled labor and that will be good jobs. There was no mention of afterwards, once it's open, what are the quality of the jobs that are there years going forward once it's open. So I'd like that to be a part of the discussion as well. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. So Josh, followed by Yelena Zeltzer.
Good evening. My name is Josh Bourgeois, and I'm with the Golden State Environmental Justice Alliance, and we submitted a comment letter to the draft environmental impact report, and I won't repeat any of the ideas from our letter we have already put out there, just because of the time limit. So I'm just here tonight just to state that we stand by our comment letter, and we believe that the draft environmental impact report is inadequate and should be redrafted and recirculated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yelena, followed by Lisa Lee.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Yelena Zelter. I'm a research analyst with Unite Here Local 11. I'm a resident of Los Angeles. We represent over 30,000 hospitality and food service workers in the Los Angeles and Orange counties, as well as Phoenix, Arizona, and some of them are here with me today. Dozens of our members live and work in the city of Redondo Beach. We believe that there are serious issues with the project's qualifications for its requested entitlements, as well as the final EIR prepared for the project. They were submitted to you in a letter from Gideon Krakow, and I also have hard copies here that I would like to submit. First, the project has major inconsistencies with the city's general plan, including that it exceeds the plan's floor area ratio limits and residential densities limits. Second, the plan's request for a variance from height restrictions cannot be granted. The city cannot find that there are special circumstances in this case. The large size of the project site reduces the need for excessive height, as structures can be built out rather than up. In addition, the applicant attempts to compare the proposed project with the movie theater, but the theater is a substantially different use that requires more height to accommodate screen sizes. A truly similar comparison would be the SB Galleria remainder, which does not appear to enjoy any excessive heights. With respect to the CEQA requirements, the final EIR has severe deficiencies in its greenhouse gas impact analysis, including failing to discuss how the city will reach its 2050 greenhouse gas reduction goals and using an inadequate baseline for its analysis. The project also misses a chance to incorporate a TOD development by minimizing the amount of housing units included. Finally, the EIR admits that at a minimum, the project will have significant unmitigated traffic impacts and will therefore require the adoption of a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the project's benefits outweigh its environmental harm. Under CEQA, key among these findings is the provision of employment opportunities for highly trained workers. The EIR and staff report are inadequate because they do not address the quality of jobs provided by the project. We urge the city to deny discretionary approvals and require the full consideration of potential significant impacts under a recirculated EIR. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, followed by...
Motion to receive and file?
Second.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Lisa Lee. I work at the Renaissance LAX as a barista. OIC, the new owner of the South Bay Galleria, is a developer based in Queensland, Australia. They are a large institutional money manager focused on making money for their investors and have no ties to the Redondo Beach community or understanding what we need here. Additionally, QIC only recently became a full owner of the project after the project was already in planning process. According to the industry publications, we are in the midst of a retail apocalypse, with retailers filing for bankruptcy and closing their stores. This has happened to Toys R Us, Payless, Sports Authority, and many others. I'm concerned about this project adding more retail space here for an industry that's already struggling. The developer should spend more time listening to the desires of the residents and the community members so that the project better reflects the needs of the city for good, well-paying jobs in the hospitality sector. We ask you to deny the project as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Luis Preciado, followed by Doug Boswell. Luis. Luis? Okay. Doug Boswell, followed by Joanne Galen.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Good evening, neighbors, especially you guys from Lawndale. Glad to see you're here. My name is Doug Boswell. I'm a resident of North Redondo, and I've been to a lot of the public meetings that have been organized around this thing, and I don't know that I would say I've been to 75 of them. I had no idea that there were that many. I wasn't invited to that many, but I would say that the Galleria has a real problem the way it is now. I mean, it's definitely got a crime and a sleaze issue, and we really need for this project to be successful. We really want something different in that spot than what's there now. There are a lot of people at these meetings that I went to that are afraid to go to the Galleria, that are afraid to shop there. I do shop there, but I don't know how long that'll last if it just continues to get worse. So how did it get like that? It was your property. For years and years and years, you let it just slide away.
Excuse me? Please address the commission.
Forever, the Planning Commission, the local city council, for years and years, the biggest moneymaker in the city was allowed to just deteriorate. You guys never got together to do something about it. Now we're going to redevelop this, and it's like overkill. Now, I like mixed use. I like the idea of it. It sounds great. But when residential is part of that mix, it doesn't work for this particular city because Redondo Beach is 120 years old. We've been developing this place for 120 years, for over a century. It's full. We have no more room. We need to not only eliminate this residential component, but it would be a great idea to expand on the professional office space, because I know why they want residential on the property. It's because it's bait for potential retail and dining tenants. Professional office space would be a far better source of bait to get people with a higher level of income, more disposable income, that are there all day. Professional office space workers, attorneys, CPAs, architects, they're working late. They're probably going to be catered to by these restaurants. There's a great money-making opportunity there. Now, I'm not expecting whoever it is that now owns this property to particularly listen to me, but I would like you to reconsider the basic business premise of what you're trying to do here, and I would like the Planning Commission to encourage them to take a better business approach to what will make this project successful. Like I said, we really need this to work, and I don't think adding 300 apartments and about 1,000 people and enough cars to fill 605 parking spaces is going to improve the community at all. It's going to make it a lot worse. We have a transportation infrastructure that cannot be expanded. And you're going to dump that many more cars on there, all trying to get out in the morning to go to work?
Thank you very much.
I don't think it's going to work. Thank you.
Joanne Galen, followed by Laura Zahn. Joanne?
Joanne must have left.
Okay. Laura Zahn? Come on down. Followed by Sean Guthrie.
Laura Zahn, born and raised in the 2300 block of North Redondo, right down the street from the Galleria. Tomato, tomato. The developers describe this project as improvements. When the headlines say, wholesale change. The improvements will require 5 applications: mitigation monitoring, Planning Commission design review, CUP permits, EAR certification, vesting tentative map. That's not what I call improvements. That's what I call complete transformation. Improvements are a color scheme change, landscape plants, window treatments, paving, or signage. Transformations: office space that's not there now, housing that's not there now, opening up a large portion that's enclosed now, a hotel that's not there now, and increased retail space when shops are closing already. The developers tout this project as an experience-based shopping center. targeting retailers on the cutting edge, chef-driven restaurants. A quote from Mailman, we will have the opportunity to have something that you don't find anywhere in the South Bay. Well, the exact same criteria is at the Point, in El Segundo, and the revamped Del Amo Mall. I say tomato, you say tomato, it's the same old, same old.
Thank you. Sean Guthrie, followed by Jordan Cecchitelli.
Good evening, Chair, Chairman, and fellow commissioners, staff. Sean Guthrie, lifelong resident, and I'd like to compliment staff on their hard work and working with the developer and trying to come up with something that's acceptable to this community. In general, I support the revitalization of this center and as a critical revenue generator to our city's general fund. Although, being that I live in the south portion of the city, I'm going to leave it up to this fine commission and the neighboring community to work out the details of what may be finally approved. The reason I'm here particularly is because I've worked with the Beach Cities Health District's Livability Committee for the past 7 years since we adopted the Blue Zones project, and we've worked hard to put in place in our city and also our neighboring Hermosa and Manhattan Beach livability plans, living streets policies, streets for all, to create a much more pedestrian, bicycle-friendly community. So with that in mind, I applaud the developer and the city working together to create a much more pedestrian and bicycle-friendly plan within the site. But there's one element that I'm particularly interested in seeing occur here, is that at least from our city standpoint, there's better connectivity for the bicyclists. Grant Avenue currently, I'd like to introduce this to you.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So ordered.
A very simple thing to point out that currently Grant Avenue has Class 2 bike lanes that run continuously for a mile and a half between Aviation Boulevard and Pomona Avenue, stopping 1 block short of the Kingsdale Avenue intersection. And as shown on the area map below, you can see, I mean, it's literally distance of 120 yards and 84 yards short. So I would like to see incorporated into this project requirements to improve not only extending those bike lanes so that there is true connectivity into this project. Once you get onto the property, they have nice improvements for bicyclists and pedestrians, and secondarily to look at modifying that intersection because it's not conducive to cyclists as it exists today. And one thought is what we've been promoting is roundabouts that are much more safe and user-friendly and reduces greenhouse gases and whatnot.
Thank
you very much.
Jordan, followed by Jose Pina.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jordan Cecchitelli. I'm with Local 105 Sheet Metal Workers, and we support this project. The project provides many benefits to the community, like more housing and office space, revitalization of the mall, and community to local hire and paying fair wages for workers who will build this project. We acknowledge the development projects come with a cost too. But in this case, the benefits outweigh the costs, and we urge you to approve this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jose Pina, followed by Godfrey Wachera. Jose? Okay.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jose Pina on behalf of Creed LA.
And Crater Lake works to ensure that development projects in Los Angeles and surrounding communities like Redondo Beach minimize environmental and public health impacts on individuals and families who live and work in the region. We would like to thank the city for taking seriously the legal and technical issues identified in our comments and for its thorough and good faith responses and additional investigations, including preparing a revised health risk assessment concerning construction-related emissions and providing additional information on the project's alternatives. We thank you for your time in addressing our concerns. We have no further objections to the project, and we are in full support of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Godfrey, then followed by Chris Cheek.
Good evening. My name is Godfrey Washira. I'm also with CREED LA, and I'm here in support of the project. First, the applicant listened to the community and made some adjustments to their plans, which we think is a really good thing, a real check. Also, they listened to the local workforce, and they've made a commitment to local hire. They've made a commitment to paying fair wages and ensuring that there's a safe working conditions. And I think part of what we do at CREED is help people in need of a second chance, at-risk youth, veterans, people who've been through the criminal system, and the idea that such people are not only going to get a job with this project, but they'll also be able to launch a career in the construction industry, I think is a major societal benefit worth pursuing. And finally, as my colleague mentioned, we had raised some environmental issues, and they did address all the issues that we had raised. And I think in terms of environment, it's environmentally solid project. One last comment is we've worked on development projects in many other cities, basically in LA County, and the pattern is always the same. A project of such magnitude is always proposed, and there's always a lot of opposition. But what's interesting is once such projects are eventually approved, built, and come into existence, all the negative comments or all the fears that were about the project just tend to die off, and people see the benefits. We believe this project has a lot of benefits, definitely outweigh the cost there are. As any development project, there will be a cost. I think they really do outweigh the costs. And so we hope that the commission will show some love for the project by approving it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, followed by Paul Miller.
Good evening. My name is Chris Cheek. I'm here on behalf of Plumbers Local 78. This project allows our hardworking men and women to advance their careers while earning middle-class wages and benefits. The hotel rooms and commercial space will provide long-term job opportunities for our residents. There will also be office space for new businesses to help the local economy. Let's take advantage of this great opportunity by approving the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, followed by April Papilli.
Good evening. My name is Paul Miller, and I'm a resident of Torrance. I'm right across the street from the Galleria Mall on Hawthorne, immediately facing Hawthorne. So actually, I'm affected probably the most, besides people along Kingsdale, because we actually get the downwind pollution and all the trash and everything that blows over from the Galleria. But I am in support of this project because as a development for retail in a regional center, if we don't let the mall develop and try to revitalize, it could lead to closure, which is like the Hawthorne Mall, and that a blight to the city and the surrounding region, I think, is worse than not doing anything to it. What I see, which is great, is that what they did was work with the community. We went to multiple community meetings. We saw how they address people from Kingsdale and their concerns with mitigation to what they're concerned about. What we do want to see, though, is a continued development of many of the things that were talked about already tonight. But some things that, like the Point and other developments like Del Amo, they fall short of connecting to the outside community besides just redeveloping the inner core of the project. So they, like they said about the residential, it faces inward, the courtyards are inward, and then like the development that was happening to the south of it, a lot of the sidewalks, they end and they dead end where they don't continue through. So if we had a diagram that shows how it affects the biking community, how it connects to the metro and how it connects to Torrance and Lawndale, and take a look at how it not only affects just the immediate site, but how it stretches out to the other areas, would be great to understand. You mentioned earlier, Mr. Porro, about how the residents would be better facing Kingsdale because there's other residents. We actually live right across the street from Hawthorne. We have to deal with the downwind pollution of Hawthorne, and we do get the grime and everything. And so I think that if we looked at what landscaping mitigation to mitigate pollution, both in small layered scales of bushes, trees, and everything, and I know that Caltrans is in the middle, and Torrance is on the east, and Redondo is on the west. But if we work together to kind of raise the entire ship of the whole region so that it actually helps the community and helps the residents that are coming into the new side of Hawthorne, I think it'd be great to benefit everyone. So I think that, I also am concerned about construction when it does occur, mitigation from construction from sound pollution, and also pollution for dirt and everything. Because if they're digging for 12 months, we'd love to see if there's sound barriers like lead impregnated barriers that are in place, especially if they're, I don't know if they're going to be building 24 hours. But anyways, again, if you can reach out to all the communities and take a look at the landscaping. Thank you.
Okay, April, followed by Cynthia Perry. April? Okay, April's not here. Cynthia? Okay, how about Mark Bell? All right, followed by Chris Hannon.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Mark Bell. I'm a resident, also a 105 sheet metal worker. I've been a long-term resident. All three of my kids have gone through the Redondo Beach school systems, and I care a lot about the city. And like you, this is my city. I'm behind this project. I mean, I drive the same streets you do, and I see what's happening to the old Galleria. And I think it's time to clean that place up. I think this is a good project. I think most of the issues I've heard so far is about traffic. And I don't know if you've been around there around Christmas time. I don't see how there could be any more traffic than there is around that time of year. And I think maybe upgrading the off-ramps at Inglewood, Hawthorne, Prairie, and Artesia would greatly, ease that issue. But once again, I do approve this, and like others have mentioned, turning a blind eye to this is probably going to be a lot worse than dealing with little change. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Chris, followed by Nathan Stanton.
Good evening, Honorable Commissioners, staff. My name is Chris Hannon, Council Representative for the Los Angeles, Orange Counties Building and Construction Trades Council, representing 48 affiliated organizations, representing over 100,000 of the finest trained men and women in the construction industry. Wanted to testify on the quality of the labor and the quality of the careers that are going to be used to construct this project. It'd be built by the highest trained craftspeople anywhere around. We support the staff's recommendation to approve the project and look forward to building it. Thank you.
Thank you. Nathan, followed by Gus Torres.
Hi, I'm Nathan Stanton. I moved here back into 2010. Didn't know nobody here. I got 3 kids that go to Lincoln Elementary. That's north of Redondo. I started coaching, learning the community, and I love this place. I love the mall. I go to it a lot, and I really like what y'all have drawn up. I think it's going to do a heck of a job. It's going to bring people. And I recommend keeping it just like you drawed it up, because I live on the Kingsdale side. I like to look across here and see how beautiful that mall looks. The drive in, and it's a big fresh air, you know. It's going to be awesome. And I'm also a member of the local 105. I'm a sheet metal worker. I've traveled all over the country, welding, duct work, car plants. I love to do this job with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Gus, followed by Albert Duarte.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gus Torres, and I'm here on behalf of Local 250 pipe fitters, welders, and apprentices. And we all express our support for this project. We are excited about this project because the applicant has committed to providing good paying jobs, local hire, and using responsible contractors. There will also be a safe working environment for our workers, minimizing health and safety hazards. We are proud to support this project, and we strongly urge that you approve it. Thank you for your time. Have a good night, and God bless.
Thank you. Albert. Okay. Sam Cartoonian, followed by Eugene Solomon.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Sam Cartoonian, resident of District 3 and a small business owner actually in the South Bay Galleria. My family's owned a business in the South Bay Galleria for over 22 years, Beach Cities Watch Company and Tick Time. The applicant shared about an experience. Customers want an experience. And that's where my business draws from. I do a lot of watch collectors, and they can shop for watches anywhere. But they want to come to a store that actually knows about the product and can share an experience with the customer. And this project nails that right on the head. It's all about an experience. The new millennials want an experience. That's what they want to get out of the house for. That's what I want to shop for. When my customers come in on a daily basis, what they say is they love the Galleria because it's so small, so easy to get to, so easy to shop around. And Del Amo does not offer that. My customers now are forced to go to Del Amo because that's the only game in town. However, Del Amo has dropped the ball because they don't offer any experiences. What the Galleria can do right now, what they're proposing right now, is really forward-thinking, something that can withstand time, and something that's really going to hold up for many years to come. I really support the project, and I hope you guys will approve the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Eugene, followed by Tony Zuliger.
Good evening, members of the commission and staff. Eugene Solomon, District 2. I want to thank the union folks here for coming down, and I hope that they come back after they're done with the project and shop at the place they're talking about and come to live with us, those who don't. I'm not really sure how you can approve this project tonight, considering what you've heard from the city of Lawndale. That's some pretty stark information, and I think we should try and work with our colleagues to the city and maybe trail this along until that can be resolved. When it comes to park space, I'd like for things like swales and bioswales and things like that not to be considered open space, but to have real open space and real parks and projects. When it comes to the housing component, affordable housing, the people at the Air Force get COLA benefits to be able to afford market rate rents, but I don't believe that teachers do. I don't know if there is affordable housing as part of the project or Section 8 housing to help us meet our requirements that way. I'd like to find out more about affordable housing within the residential component. QIC had this project bought from Forest City. Forest City has moved away from retail and are focusing only on residential and office space now. We don't have any office space that's Class A in Redondo Beach. When I spoke to Jeff Mailman, I think that Jeff did a great job in the community outreach, and I think that he bore the slings and arrows pretty well because he got a lot of them. They had a silo, and they tried to allocate it within there. Residential and retail are the highest profit centers for any developer, and that's why you see much more residential and retail in this project than you do office space. But office space would activate the site during the day. It would activate the site so the people who were living in the units, the 300 units, can live and work and play in the same place. But more office space is not part of it. In fact, we don't know how much office space is going to be part of this. And I think that that's a serious consideration when you're balancing out that silo of square footage. I'd like to go ahead and convey to you that I know this is not an easy thing for you to do. You have to manage a lot of things. The traffic impacts can't be mitigated. Generally speaking, I'd love to see what's happening at the Galleria. I'd like to see what's happening with the project. But I think that open space malls have been around for 25 years. This is not a new thing. It's to meet the new boss, it's the same as the old boss. So you can have as many adjectives and catchy phrases and things like that to describe how you're going to change the face of retail. But you have to recognize that the trend is not positive in that direction. So more Class A office space, activate the site during the day, have some retail restaurant, but focus on being able to keep people living in the city, reducing traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony, followed by Just Money.
Good evening to the commission. I'll be quite honest with you. Over the years, I haven't gotten very many mailings from the developer on this project. In fact, in our whole complex in Redondo, which I live in on Ruxton Lane, I've asked other neighbors and they've gotten very few. Beginning of the year, I did talk to Aaron and told him about it, so we've been getting more of them now. So that's made a difference. This is the first meeting I've come to on the project because, frankly, I haven't heard a whole lot about it other than what I read in the paper. So as far as the past history of the outreach to our community and our general area there east of Englewood Avenue has been very slim on as far as the outreach. Now, the city of Torrance, I don't know if you're familiar, they do a posting that they put in the streets with a sheet of paper and they tell you what's going on, when it's happening. That might be a good idea in the city of Redondo Beach to add that to your queue. As far as the mall, I don't really oppose the mall per se, obviously, because I live near it. But I do oppose some of the design characteristics of it. And I think especially would be on the Hawthorne side is one area where I think they should step those structures a little bit so that they're not a monolithic wall that's standing up on Hawthorne Boulevard. If you've been down Jefferson Avenue or Jefferson Boulevard in LA's, you know, it's like a canyon of buildings when you drive down Jefferson. I don't want to see that in the area that we're looking at on Hawthorne Boulevard. As far as Kingsdale, I think that Kingsdale needs to be widened. I think they need to make that wider. It's a 2-lane road in one direction and a 1-lane road in the other, all the way to 182nd. That's not acceptable for a development of this size. And I think that needs to be addressed. The parking structure, I'm not aware if any changes are going to be done to that existing parking structure height-wise, but I can tell you that when some of these movies come out over there at the mall, Fast and Furious, all those kids, they rip through that parking lot and it's a screamer with those cars and it is noisy. So if they're going to do a parking structure additional in that south section, they need to mitigate the noise level for these kids putting big speed bumps in to mitigate that noise. I would like to see the building to the south elevation that's just to the east of that new 2-story parking structure to be possibly stepped as well. I think stepping and breaking up the height of these buildings would make a big improvement for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jess, followed by Sheila Lamb.
Jess Money, 40-year homeowner and resident. First of all, Commissioner Topero raised this idea that we must meet state regulations. That's a technical straw man. There's no teeth in that law. Manhattan Beach has been ignoring it not for years, but for decades. Every year they get a letter from the state saying you're not in compliance. And they write back, we've received your letter of such and such date, thank you. And that's all that happens. Now, it's been 17 years since Heart of the City put traffic and density on the public radar, and yet we have this repetitive thing that goes on over and over and over again. Inappropriate projects in terms of traffic and density. And I've tried to figure out why developers and staff and most of our elected officials don't get the message. And I've come down to the conclusion that it must be a virus, and I just wonder if anybody knows whether it's transmitted through the water or the air. The EIR complaints raised by Lawndale sounds a lot like Lawndale's getting ready to drop a litigation hammer. The EIR itself is typical. It's phony. It's designed to reach a predetermined conclusion. When Heart of the City came out, Hermosa Beach sued that EIR and put a stake right in its heart. Dead, bang, you never heard from that EIR again, and I have a feeling the same is going to happen with this one. There's a typical lack of community involvement here. You look at the recommendations up there. Take public comment, then approve the project. There's a difference between outreach, which is informal discussions, and what we're doing right now, which is public testimony. At this point, I'd like to second the comments made by Bob Pinsler a few minutes ago, by Eugene Solomon, and the Lawndale officials, because they're right on point. I would also like to say that I don't know if any of this trips Measure DD or Measure G, but there is always the possibility that if this goes on long enough and is bad enough, you'll end up with a referendum or an initiative. And I will tell you what my fear is there, that people in District 4 and 5 have been supporting growth limits in South Redondo for 2 decades now. If we do an initiative or a referendum up there that actually benefits them, I'm afraid some of the petition gatherers are going to get trampled by people trying to sign the petition. The building trades groups come down here. My dad was a hard hat. I'm a union member, but we cannot trade 3 years of good jobs for 30 years of negative impact. And I'd like to close by inviting any of those people from Lawndale who want to move in here,
Thank you.
get hired by our staff, or run
Thank
for
you.
office.
Sheila, and then John Huff.
Good evening, Commissioners. Sheila Lamb, District 4, long-term homeowner. Most Redondo Beach residents are in agreement that improving the Galleria is in our collective best interest. However, while respecting the rights of the property owner to make improvements on the property, these improvements must serve the interests of the community first and adjacent communities, and must not come at the expense of the community's quality of life and well-being. Redondo Beach City Government has committed to the Blue Zone's livability plan, and now it is time to make the hard choices and take action in line with that commitment. The Planning Commission should not support the inclusion of 300 rental housing units because of its negative impact on the quality of life for Redondo Beach residents. First, traffic. 90% of residents commute outside the city for work, which causes significant traffic congestion, as many of you know, and public safety issues that impact every resident's quality of life. Our city and residential streets are not designed for this current population. Built in the 60s, when our population was 7,000 people per square mile, we are now at 11,000 people per square mile, one of the highest in the South Bay. While supporters claim that the new residents will use public transportation, a recent study shows that ridership in all modes of public transportation are significantly reduced and will continue this downward trend, indicating that the new Galleria residents will not be using public transportation, but will be adding to the commuting outside of the city by car, increasing congestion, overloading our city streets even more, and decreasing residents' quality of life. More housing puts a drain on city services. Aside from the traffic, the rental housing, while a clear economic value for the owner, puts a drain on city services. Fire, police, and public works especially, these departments are already highly impacted by the current service demands, and more housing will just add to the service demands and to the costs. More housing adds to the job-housing imbalance. We need more Class A office space to accommodate the employment needs of our residents, and not more housing for commuters. Keeping our residents working in the city reduces commuting time and increases residents' quality of life, as well as the quality of life of all residents of the community. I urge you to place a priority on the common good of the community, its well-being, and residents' quality of life.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, John.
Hello, Commission, and I appreciate you pronouncing my last name correctly. Very few people do. I live on Condon Avenue. I live 2 blocks west of the Galleria. I bought in 2007 as real estate prices were cresting. We like to call our neighborhood East Redondo, the gentrifying East Redondo, but unfortunately it hasn't been gentrifying. It has slowly been, I don't want to call it decaying, but we're not seeing a lot of young families move there. We're not seeing a lot of people come into the area. Some of the people that currently come into the area are clearly not there to shop. And I see this as a tremendous opportunity. I took the Green Line bus rail tour 2 weeks ago. I saw firsthand what the Metro has done to certain communities. If you go to the Ivy Station in Culver City, you'll be blown away by what's built there. And I think that whether it's the general plan or whether it's, artificial grass versus natural grass or the variance, I think those are things that can be overcome easily, and this can move the city forward in a big way. And I just want to see something really positive happen to our part of town. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other requests? Come on.
Hello there, Johnny London, Lawndale, South Lawndale. That'll be right in the impact zone. I know you were talking that there's going to be a lot of parking spaces, and eventually no one will be parking there. Well, gas, diesel, hybrid, electric cars, everyone drives, everyone needs a parking space. Now, I don't know if you live by us, but it's not fun. The traffic there sucks. The signals aren't regulated very well. If you're on Hawthorne headed south, cross traffic at Redondo Beach Boulevard or Artesia, they can't get through. So your light turns green, you can't move. I would like to see the project, like she said, okay, Meadowlarks Pottery, you got retail, some offices, you have a hotel. The point, you have retail offices, no hotel, no residential. I think if you guys try to make it something like The Point or Meadowlarks, where if you want to have a hotel, fine, scrap the residential. You do not need all those people impacting Lawndale, Torrance, and Northeast Redondo. It's a nightmare there. People coming from deep in Redondo, deep in Palos Verdes, it won't help the situation. You build something like Del Amo, something like that where you could have the office space. You build 300 apartments. Maybe 1, 2 might work there, but I doubt that. And the people who do live there, probably they won't be able to afford to be working there. They'll need a much better job. And that, so I think you should scrap the apartments, think about office space, think about doing the open retail. Also think about, okay, bicycles and people. They don't mix. And that you need specific bicycle area because you go down the Strand, it's dangerous. You know, you almost get hit by a bicycler. And then right now, if you go to Sprouts, you got to watch out because people aren't looking. That parking lot is a disaster zone. You got to look out because people are just wandering. Cars are not paying attention. Pedestrians aren't paying attention. You add all those people into that mix, recipe for disaster too. So I just hope you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. That it? Ah.
Pam London, Lawndale resident, unfortunately. Hawthorne Boulevard has been a mess. Redondo Beach controls a big part of that intersection and neglects it on a daily basis. You used to have your officers out there to kind of avoid all the traffic problems. Talking about freeway access and all the other mess, well, you're leaving that up to other cities to handle your freeways as well. When there was an expansion issue with Redondo Beach, you added the 3 hotels. Redondo Beach wouldn't even consider cutting a corner. I realize it's your gas station, but it would have helped to alleviate some of the traffic problems. You don't talk to Lawndale. I don't really talk to Lawndale either. But in this project, it is a major, major effect on that city. We already have the ghetto birds on a regular basis from your shoppers at your mall. They go in there, they shoplift, they come over to Lawndale to hide from the police officers. Your officers do not talk to the sheriff's department in Lawndale either. They come over willy-nilly looking for their shoplifters. They don't inform the sheriff's department that they're there. So I don't know what your revitalization will do. I don't know if it will help or if it will hurt. El Segundo is a big, big area. It's not a lot of shops. It's not housing. And I did live in El Segundo prior. The El Segundo project is very nice. But if you look at it, it's very limited on how many shops are there in comparison. And the rentals, at one point, this project was condominiums. At least a homeowner, condominium owner, property owner has more value to your city and is more invested in your city than a renter. Lawndale's full of renters. And they are not invested in the city. And it's a shame, and you don't need to add more. And talk of teachers, well, I hope you're prepared to give them big raises so that they can pay for these rents, because you've said it's not going to be affordable housing. And the military, as you were told, they get a stipend for their housing. So again, you're looking at things from one view, but you're not looking at the big picture. And that mall is right adjacent to another city on one side and another city on another. And you've not spoken to either. I never got any letter of intent.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, this time, okay. Couldn't coax them, huh? We'll go ahead and close our, okay. Squeaked right in.
Abram Lawndale. I tried to get on a mailing list for this whole project years ago, and I had to track down this meeting tonight. But I'd like to reiterate that, I mean, I was appalled what Director Morris said, that he's reached out to the city and has had no response. Maybe a lot of their concerns would have been resolved by now, and you wouldn't have this threat of of potential lawsuit going before you if they listened, you know. Now, I've got to also add that as a former planning commissioner for Lawndale, I would be very concerned about your EAR based on what they've said tonight. And if I were on your shoes, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I would really check with your legal advisor before you go forward on what may be a defective EIR. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is that it now? Okay.
Motion to close public comment?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Anyone need a recess, or do you want to keep going?
Well, I think first if we could allow staff maybe to respond to anything that they
Yeah.
would like to.
Well, that's what I was wondering.
Actually, because we're gonna have a lot of
Questions for staff?
5-minute recess.
Yeah, why don't we take
Got some
yeah. Let's take a 5-minute recess, and then we can give them an opportunity to respond.
I make a motion to take a 10-minute recess.
10 minutes?
5?
12 or 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 15 minutes?
Okay, why don't we do?
All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
All in favor?
10:25.
Okay, let's meet back at 10:25.
10:25.
Call the meeting back to order. May I please have a roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Stretzenberg. Commissioner Topero. Commissioner Mitchell. Commissioner Rodriguez. Commissioner Elder. Commissioner Glad. And Chair Ung.
Here. Back on. Sorry. Okay. At this time, we'd like to, start perhaps some responses to some of the concerns.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Ung. Staff is happy to respond to some of the public testimony for the, at least some suggested responses for the commission to consider. So I think we'll probably start off with Tyson. Well, hang on a second. No. You okay? One of our team members was not back yet. Okay, so with that, maybe Tyson will address some of the comments that we took note upon.
Certainly. The City of Lawndale made several allegations, one of which is that the city is approving a variance for the general plan. That is not correct. Currently, 2 variances are proposed. In the northwest corner, there is a variance for height for an existing structure to 67 feet. Additions to existing structures under your general plan policy are permissible up to 100 feet. The other variance is for stories in the southeast corner of the project site. That building meets the height limits laid out in the general plan. There are no story limits in the general plan for that structure. I would also note that Lawndale asserted that the EIR needed to be recirculated because the city identified the units as being rental units as opposed to ownership units. We responded directly to that assertion in response AL 002-17, where we explained that existing CEQA case law explains that the end user of the project site does not need to be identified to have an adequate EIR. Finally, the City of Lawndale also asserted that Alternative 4.1 is new and therefore required recirculation. This is also incorrect. Alternative 4.1 was disclosed in Draft EIR Chapter 4.0.
And now Stacy will address the issue of working with Lawndale and attempting to meet with them.
Yes, so I've had correspondence with Director Moore directly since February. We had scheduled a meeting with the City of Lawndale for March 8th at 3 p.m. They actually canceled last minute, approximately 15 minutes before that meeting, and we had our legal team assembled to meet with them. We did reschedule a meeting, and we were able to meet with them earlier this week, where we discussed the impacts with them. We welcomed them to suggest mitigation measures for the impacts that they perceived. However, they didn't have any additional suggestions.
Just a few further comments. We always work cooperatively with adjacent cities. The opportunities for Lawndale's involvement have included from the initial day of the scoping meeting throughout the entire environmental process. Clearly, they're aware of the project. They submitted a multi-page comment letter, which we responded to with at least 60 pages of response that is included in your response to comments in the EIR. So Lawndale has had many opportunities. I would also point out that when we asked them to suggest mitigation measures that they felt would reduce or eliminate impacts, since the comment was made that the project would have citywide impacts on the city of Lawndale, they were unable to identify any mitigation measures. We further asked them, what's your criteria for determining an impact when we found that they had not adopted any thresholds of significance for traffic impacts? The city has clear adopted thresholds that we abide by in reviewing projects. So given the fact that no mitigation was suggested nor no criteria was presented to the city, it leaves us in a difficult position. Lawndale would clearly like to work with us, but we believe that we're going to have to get some meaningful information from them in order to address their concerns. So that's that.
Aaron, there was also one other suggestion from Lawndale that the site did not have transit access. I believe that was incorrect. There is an existing transit center there that is being relocated to just south of the project site.
Yes, I have a note that George, the senior transportation engineer, said the project is not transit-oriented. There's no bus stop. There are bus stops on Hawthorne Boulevard. There are bus stops in a transit center existing on the back of the property. In fact, 5 transit providers, separate lines, serve this facility. A comment was made, try to find a grocery store. Well, there are 3 grocery stores within the CR zone immediately adjacent to this property. Those would be the Ralph's, the Sprouts, and Target is now morphing into a grocery store. The no worksheets in the EIR comment is actually correct. All the worksheets are contained in appendices to the EIR, and those are all available for public review. So anyway, this is this and the response to comments that we issued to all the public letters received adequately respond to the questions raised by Lawndale and a number of other comments received tonight. So that's kind of what staff wanted to bring back forward. There are other comments that if you want to question, we can certainly answer for you.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what would be the criteria for having to resubmit the EIR?
Oh, our CEQA attorney can.
Generally, the criteria are laid out under CEQA Guidelines Section 15088.5, which talk about new significant impacts, a considerably different alternative that the city declines to adopt. Again, Alternative 4.1 was fully disclosed in the draft EIR.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Toporoff.
Yes. I find it most interesting that we had 7 submissions from Lawndale, and the other adjoining city is Torrance, I believe. And we did have 1 resident from Torrance who's in support of the project, but no one else from Torrance. So I'm wondering, I'm sure that traffic is equally an issue for Torrance as it would be for Lawndale. So I would like to know, what is the root cause of Lawndale's great displeasure and Torrance's absence?
That would call for speculation on my part.
It's speculation, but I just want to put it out there. I just find it's interesting. Just, I'm at a loss here to understand. Okay.
Oh. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Yeah, so I had a question. There was suggestion that we eliminate residential altogether. But if the developer is zoned where they're allowed to, wouldn't we open up ourselves for a lawsuit from the developer? I mean,
well,
if we just said, no, we don't want any residential.
I think you would have more issues with the State Housing Accountability Act. Recent amendments in 2017 say that if you can no longer meet your RENA allocation, that you have to upzone other areas in the city within 180 days to show that you can meet that RENA allocation. So if you say no to residential on this site, there are a series of procedures laid out in your administrative report, but they may ultimately end up forcing the city to upzone it in other locations that may have more detrimental impacts than this location.
It sounded like the threshold was 298 in terms of this location.
That was the amount that was analyzed in your housing element in terms of meeting your RENA allocation.
Yes, that was reported to the state as the number necessary for our housing sites inventory.
If anything less than 298 would trigger the, an upzoning.
Potentially, there's a little room to work with here, but that is the number we reported to the state.
And it would greatly limit your ability to consider other residential projects in the city.
Thank you.
And Aaron, maybe you can refresh my memory, but the traffic for residential versus commercial, which one actually drives more traffic?
Well, we could ask our traffic engineer, but this type of residential, unlike a single-family home that generates 6 to 9 trips per residence, is down in the 5 trips per. And in a mixed-use environment, there are cases where some residents aren't generating trips at all. So this is a very low trip generation use. In terms of commercial, I often point out the example of Redondo Shore Shopping Center, which is 105,000 square feet, and the Village condominium development over here. And they're both approximately the same square footage. You can lay in the driveway of the Village for about 15 minutes before a car comes out. I wouldn't try it at Redondo Shores. So it's something on the order of 4 to 10 times the amount of traffic per square foot.
Okay, and then the bicycle lane continuation on Grant, I mean, is that something that the city's considering?
Well, we already are, and yes, we will. There is an existing bike lane on Grant, and it's narrow, but it is a striped bike lane that takes the Grant bicycle traffic under the railroad bridge into the Galleria. The project will reconfigure that intersection at Grant and Kingsdale to provide for safe bike crossing. So that'll be re-signalized, realigned. And we did get a comment about Kingsdale needed widening. Well, this project does provide for a free flow right turn lane for the full length of Kingsdale from Grant all the way to Artesia, in addition to the open space and bike path along the street there. So we have the bike connection covered.
Okay, you answered one of my questions, thanks. And as far as the sidewalks, I know now if you're walking on the sidewalk on Hawthorne Boulevard and you try and get across, you're basically walking across the parking lot, right? And now this is going to incorporate sidewalks to get to the internal portion of the development, correct?
Yeah, in your plan package, you'll see that pedestrian circulation, bike circulation, and vehicle circulation are really well defined. And I think will be nicely signed to let people know where's the transit center, that would be part of the project to identify those paths clearly to people.
Okay, and then one thing that I think it was Zuliger mentioned was step structures, because I know that we've done that, or that's been presented on other projects like the Broadway condominiums where they're up, down, in and out, and actually eliminates it looking so massive.
Well, there is a lot of articulation in these building designs, and I don't know if it's obvious until you study. I know Mr. Zuliger said that he hadn't had a good chance to really dig into it, but as far as the Kingsdale side of the project, the two-level parking area is 23.5 feet high. There isn't a need to step that back. It has a 30-foot setback, which is fully landscaped with rows of trees, plus it's set back. The Hawthorne side is a little more vertical, but this is an area where the street's of sufficient width that it's the right scale for the street. We've looked at the building. It has insets, recesses, an offset. It does achieve that articulation through design.
Okay, I think that's all for now. Thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Mitchell.
So with regard to the legal advising that we're looking to get, I mean, or at least we heard the question, defective EIR, you guys want to comment directly at that?
Well, I believe we've addressed many of those issues in the series of response to comments, many of which these issues are, again, repetitive of what was been discussed, and I believe we discussed some of the main issues that were raised regarding the EIR and the need for recirculation earlier. But if you have a specific question, I mean, for example, the late comment letter from Unite Here's legal counsel asserted that we used an incorrect baseline because we included Nordstrom's. Well, for one, Nordstrom's was operational at the time of the NOP, which is the normal baseline condition. Two, there's a case directly on point in the city of Carlsbad. In that instance, they expressly upheld a baseline where they added in a vacant use that had been vacant for, I believe, 7 years. So there's any number of issues that I'm happy to address, but unfortunately, there've been so many raised. I think would have to be a little bit more specific.
That'll suffice for
Okay.
now. Yeah, and then I guess the other thing too that I just quickly comment on before my next question is, I mean, if people don't know, we do have a country, Great Britain, where the City of London right now is trying to figure out how to continue on making residential units, but they're throwing down on nothing less than 200 square feet. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing to think that we are now needing to think of it from the other side, going the other way. It's truly amazing. But back to this project, there's 3 grocery stores you had mentioned, Aaron. The one, though, thing that I wanted to bring up on that front was that you have a pharmacy just across the street in Walgreens, correct?
2. There's one in Walgreens, one in Target. Target carries CVS brand pharmacy.
Okay. So it takes care of that. And then I guess the other thing, too, is just making sure with the deconstruction. I know that there was talk about construction of this being done by the trades, but there is also to maximize safety and to mitigate, but also to take care of completely getting rid of any kind of accidents. On the deconstruction, you would still have the same quality of workers, right, as you would have to do the construction, right? This would be a question for...
Yeah, that's correct. I think the same thoughtful comment came from the gentleman who lived across the street, who also had questions about noise and dust abatement and things like that. Not only do we take that very seriously, but we appoint one point of contact so that residents know exactly who to call when there's an issue, so it can be dealt with immediately.
Okay.
So in terms of demolition and construction activity, it's thoroughly studied in the EIR. One of the clear things we look at it is noise impacts of construction equipment, requiring staging areas to be located far back from residential uses, sound attenuation blankets if necessary to do work closer than a distance that would result in exceedance of our decibel limits. The BMPs for water quality start from the very first site demolition work and would require watering, soil stabilization, truck wheel cleaning. Nowadays, construction sites are much cleaner than they used to be. I still, would warn residents that there will be dust and there will be dirt, but the effort is there and the conditions are there, and the penalties are severe for those that violate water quality and construction regulation conditions. Stopping work on a job like this is very, very painful for them, and that's what happens.
So, and then that goes to my last question for now, is that, with the deconstruction and the construction jobs being quality, as far as the back end of this, once, if and when the project will be done, you guys are open to having conversations, I'm assuming, with the Teamsters, right? I mean, they had expressed an interest in meeting with you. I know you're already talking to Unite here as well as the building trades.
Yeah, of course, we embrace all forms of labor, and it's a bit unique. In our role, we have a very detailed and involved hand in the deconstruction and the reconstruction. But remember that the people who really make the environment are individual tenants who are entrepreneurs who are taking risk in and of themselves. And so we certainly can't speak for them, but for the deconstruction and reconstruction, and any point in which QIC has an ongoing concern for the operation of the shopping center, we're willing to talk to almost anybody that's going to make it a great place.
Thank you. That's all I have for now.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Glad.
All my questions have actually been answered. Thank you.
Hey, Commissioner Stetzenberg.
Okay, we'll start off with an easy one. Looking at the statement of overriding conditions, page 26, at the very bottom, references a government code 65963C2. I tried as hard as I could. I couldn't find any such code. Is that a valid, or is that a typo of some kind, or did I just?
863.
Well, I'd like to know.
Yes, I'm happy to look that up.
And I'm gonna need some time to review that then.
I believe that's the same site that was in your administrative.
While he's looking that up, do you want to run to another question, or?
Next one's pretty basic too. How much, the property owned by QIC is only the 29.85, I think. Is it just that block, nothing else in the whole area? Okay, so just the 29.85. But the rest of the surrounding area is zone CR, same thing. So south of the right-of-way, we could be going through this same process. Is that a fair statement? Things change hands.
Other properties in the CR zone, under current zoning, would have rights to develop. They're
Target area, all of that.
correct.
Target goes bust like Toys R Us does. So it is all, just fair to say, it's all zoned the same. It's all subject to these same limitations, call it, or
Yeah, we should
extent.
probably put up a zoning map because I'm hesitant to say it's all zoned the same.
There's the industrial that's just directly south.
That's
but
correct.
Of all the things that are zoned CR right there, they're all fair game for any of this, correct?
Wouldn't be my choice of terms,
Okay.
but could they be developed? Yes.
In the same manner.
Some have already been developed recently, and I don't know of any other properties likely to change in the near future.
So with that, does that detract from using those for RENA calculations? If they've been developed recently, do we not rely upon them, such as the whole Torrance and PCH corridor, all been redeveloped recently? It was mixed use, but no residential went in there.
Yes, we lose those sites from our inventory. They're no longer likely sites to count towards our housing allocation.
But didn't a property change hands recently where the cable company was or whatever? And I believe we actually have some representatives from them tonight that have expressed an interest in having residential on that location.
The Frontier site, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so there's an industrial site, not a CR zone.
Separate, yeah.
So that's why I
That's a good
didn't pick up on it, because it's outside of the CR zone.
Yeah.
And I'm going to offer the commission that anytime I'm asking questions, I'm free to welcome input so we can have some healthy discussion on any point and not just wait until I'm going to break this down into sections. I've got a total of 42 questions lined out. It'll take some time. They're all things like.
I can answer your question right now.
Responding to right
It
now?
is 65863C2.
65863.
Not 9. So that we would recommend that if the commission moves forward making that correction.
That would be a good correction, and it is still C2.
Correct.
Okay.
I have it right here if you'd like to see it.
I'll need a little bit of time for that.
Yes.
Okay, so next one. And on the current site that we're looking at, the QIC site, does this preclude them from in the future developing further density that would still be within the limits that are prescribed? More housing, if they wanted to take out part of the retail that didn't work out in 5 years or something, or how many years?
Parking.
They'd have to come back before commission.
But it's
and-
still open game.
Correct, and people do underdevelop their sites, and sometimes they could have potential to, well, I think you've seen that at the Galleria. They've always had, since '92, general plan, they've had a 1.5 FAR with the allowance for housing units. Well, we haven't seen it from '92 till now, and we're getting a small portion of what their potential development could be.
So it's
And
still fair game for that.
It's always,
Just
if
want
you
to
underbuild.
make sure that I'm reading it
Yeah.
right. And then along with that, what is the actual residential limit per our codes, per whatever? I've heard different numbers thrown about. What is the residential limit for this 29.85 acres? This,
Well, it's a complicated answer, but
Good.
to make it simple, if you had a vacant site, you could build 35 units per acre on the property. With the existing improvements and the project itself, we're at 650 is the maximum development potential under current conditions.
Because there was a number of 812, is that, I need to go back and look and see where I picked that up. But 650 is the current maximum.
That's what was studied in the
allowed
EIR,
under code.
650.
Well, not that was studied under the EIR, but just per the code.
I mean, theoretically, you could probably raise the entire site and develop at the maximum residential
Which
density.
they are partially raising the site.
So theoretically, you could do something like that. That's not what they've requested in this instance.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. So for now, we're just going with 650 because that's all that was studied as the maximum in the ERs. Okay. Concerning, Commissioner Rodriguez made a point about the traffic generated by commercial versus the traffic generated by residential. Are the three unmitigated impacts are all in peak hours? Is there a breakdown, because I apologize, I didn't go into the traffic study in great detail. Is there a breakdown between the contributors to those peak hours between commercial and residential? 'Cause that is the issue. And that's really what people feel is the peak hour traffic. During the day, if you take a 24 hour average, it's different, but is there that breakdown, and do we have that?
There is, and our traffic engineer is here. Spencer can come up and speak to the.
I think, Spencer, if you could just specifically speak to the unmitigated impacts significant impacts that we have, and what's the breakdown in those? I believe there's four.
Yeah, there's a view graph with the orange highlighted. Could bring that up.
Sure. So Spencer Reed, Fair and Pierce. Commissioner, the Table 9 of the traffic study has a trip generation estimate for the entire project. If you were to look at that, I don't have the math in front of me, but you can see that the shopping center aspect of it, or the commercial space, the retail space, is the largest generator substantially.
In the AM and PM hours?
Correct. In the PM, substantially. In the AM, it is still the largest, but it is not as large as a proportion as compared to the PM.
What's the AM hour corridor?
And again, this is prior to any sort of credit taking for the MXD comparative. This is just raw rate. But in the AM, it is approximately half of the raw trip generation.
For the entire site?
For the entire site.
The residential of 300 units makes up the other half?
No, the residential makes up about 1/4.
1/4.
There's also, obviously, the theater, restaurant, hotel, other aspects.
Okay.
That fill in the rest.
Very good. Thank you. So, Tyson, I'm going to direct this one kind of to you. The whole staff is open to this, but there's been allusions that I want to clarify that we can't violate the general plan. Is that true?
Well, the standard of review for general plan consistency is general plan consistency with the plan as a whole. So there's a number of cases out there that say that you need not be consistent with every individual policy. In fact, they say that it's in fact nearly impossible for